Imagine this. The world's fastest growing middle class is suddenly behaving like a recession is already here. Not because it has no money, but because it has too much of it and still refuses to spend. In the US, people max out credit cards for avocado toast, while China's middle class is hoarding cash like it's radioactive. Who is right? You decide. On paper, China should be experiencing a massive consumer boom. Households' bank deposits have surged to more than 110% of the country's entire economy. Interest rates are falling, which normally pushes people to borrow, shop, travel, and upgrade their lives. But instead of spending, families are quietly hoarding cash at pace economies haven't seen in decades. Surveys now show that more than 80% of Chinese households prefer saving over spending, something that almost never happens in a growing economy. And that's what makes the situation so strange. China's consumers are not poor. Shops are open, wages haven't collapsed, yet confidence has disappeared. Instead of buying bigger homes, new cars, or luxury products, many families are choosing to wait. Wait for safer jobs, wait for stable property price, wait for the future that suddenly feels uncertain. Economists call it precautionary saving, but the reality is much deeper. Millions of middle-class families are acting as if the system that made them richer over the last 20 years is no longer guaranteed to work. So, here is the real question. If the world's biggest middle class stops spending, what happens to the global economy next? Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe and share this video. It helps our community of smart and curious people grow. At first glance, it looks like China's middle class is simply becoming more careful with money. But what's really happening is something economists now call shadow saving, and it has almost nothing to do with getting richer.
Shadow saving means people are putting money aside not to grow wealth, but because they no longer feel financially safe. Even households with stable salaries are behaving as if their income could suddenly disappear. Instead of buying a new car, upgrading an apartment, or spending more on travel, they are quietly building a financial safety buffer. And the scale is massive. Surveys now show that more than 80% of Chinese households prefer saving over spending, one of the highest levels of financial caution ever seen in a major economy. What makes this even more surprising is that it's happening while interest rates are falling. Normally, cheaper borrowing encourages spending, but this time the opposite is happening. Lower rates are not creating confidence, they are reinforcing fear. Many people see them as a signal that something is wrong.
And that's why this is no longer just an economic issue. It's psychological. Once confidence disappears, stimulus stops working the way governments expect. People don't spend when they feel optimistic. They spend only when they feel safe. And right now, millions of middle-class families clearly don't. For decades, China's middle class depended on one thing above everything else: property. Buying an apartment was not just about having a place to live. It was the main way families built wealth, secured their future, and moved into the middle class. But something has changed.
At one point, real estate accounted for around 70% of household wealth in China, far higher than in most Western countries. Rising home prices made millions of families feel richer every single year. But that system has started to break. Property prices have been falling in many major cities, and developers that once seemed unstoppable are now struggling under massive debt. New home sales have dropped sharply compared to just a few years ago, and millions of households suddenly feel poorer, even though their salaries haven't changed. The wealth effect has reversed. When homeowners believe their property will rise in value, they spend with confidence. They upgrade cars, travel more, and buy luxury products. But when prices start falling, the opposite happens. Families stop spending and start saving again, trying to protect what they still have.
This is why China's middle class isn't collapsing financially. It's reacting to a shock. At the moment people stop trusting property as a safe investment, they quietly rebuild savings instead of spending them. The second reason behind the cash hoarding isn't visible on the surface, but it's quietly changing how millions of people think: the job market.
Wage growth in China has slowed sharply compared to the 2010s, and confidence in stable careers is fading. Youth unemployment has already climbed above 20% in recent years. And even workers with secure jobs are starting to worry that stability may not last forever. That fear is changing spending behavior in a very clear way. Chinese consumers are still spending, but only on essentials: food, transport, basic services. Everything else is being postponed. Instead of upgrading phones every year or buying luxury products, many middle-class families are choosing to wait and save, and global companies are already feeling the shift. Even giants like Apple Inc., Starbucks, LVMH, and Kering have reported weaker demand from Chinese consumers. Just a few years ago, China was the engine behind global luxury growth. Now, it's becoming one of the biggest risks.
The middle class hasn't disappeared. It still exists, still earns, and still spends, but psychologically, it has changed. Instead of feeling confident about the future, millions of families are acting with extreme caution, and that's far more powerful than any economic statistic. One of the clearest signs of this shift is something that would have sounded impossible 10 years ago. Second-hand shopping is booming in China. Yes, you heard this right.
The middle class that once chased luxury brands is now actively looking for cheaper alternatives. Platforms like Xianyu and resale platforms backed by Tencent now attract hundreds of millions of users. In fact, China's second-hand market is growing much faster than traditional retail, with some estimates showing double-digit growth while overall consumer spending remains weak. And this isn't just about saving a little money. It's about a completely different mindset. Instead of buying new phones, new clothes, or luxury accessories just to show success, many people are now focused on protecting what they already have. Even travel spending, holiday shopping, and big festival sales are still weaker than before the pandemic, despite the economy reopening.
That tells us something important. The middle class hasn't suddenly become poor, it has become cautious. People are no longer trying to look richer, they are trying to feel safer, and once that mentality changes, it becomes much harder to stimulus or lower interest rates to push consumers back into spending the way they used to. For years, the world believed one thing: China's middle class would become the biggest consumer force on Earth. Over 400 million people were expected to drive global growth for decades. That's why international companies poured billions into stores, marketing, and products aimed at Chinese consumers. In some industries, China already accounts for more than a third of global luxury spending, making it the most important market for many brands. But the trend is shifting. Instead of spending more, households are saving more. Bank deposits have passed 100% of China's GDP, and consumer confidence remains far below pre-pandemic levels. If this continues, the effects won't stay inside China. Slower spending could weaken global demand, pressure luxury markets, and even spread deflation to countries that rely on Chinese consumers. The middle class isn't disappearing. It's cautious, uncertain, and focused on rebuilding financial security. If hundreds of millions of consumers choose saving over spending, the global economy may never look the same. Here is the thought: is China's middle class simply cautious, or is this the start of deeper shift in the world economy? Share your thoughts below. Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe and share this video so you won't miss what's next. Catch you in the next one.